Ezekiel 23:20. For she lusted for her paramours, whose flesh is like the flesh of donkeys, and whose issue is like the issue of horses. The two women are metaphors or a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. For Jerusalem and Syria, paramours means lover, especially the illicit partner of a married person. The practice of idolatry and spiritual whoredom were the sins committed by those people of Jerusalem and Syria as listed. The reference to Egypt looks back to the time of the Egyptian captivity before the Exodus and during the trek through the harsh wilderness. Even then they lusted after the bountiful treasures and luxuries of Egypt. But after they were settled in their own land, they played the harlot with Assyria, hence the prophetic indictment of their harlotry. The AMP translation, Ezekiel 23:19-21. Yet she multiplied her depravities, remembering the days of her youth, when she was actively immoral in the land of Egypt, for she lusted after her lovers there, whose flesh is like the flesh of donkeys, and whose issue is like the issue of horses. Thus you longed for the lewdness and vulgarity of your youth, when the Egyptians handled your bosom on account of the breasts of your youth. The literal interpretation is as follows: For Aloba, that is Jerusalem, in which dwelled the Lord's tent. Seeing her sister's misfortune was not warning enough, so she went one better with her sister's shameful fornication. She fashioned many idols in both Dan and Bethel, and frequently adorned a statue of Baal in the high places and in God's holy temple. She then lowered herself to shame further by the act of fornication with the Assyrians, who bowed down to Baal or Satan, consecrated to Belis by his son Ninus, the first Assyrian king, in honour of his father. She fornicated herself impudently to the Assyrian horsemen, young men, the leaders and the magistrates, who were clothed in various coloured garments. So the act of fornication was committed by both sisters. Fornication is generally consensual sexual intercourse between two people not married to each other. For in this way Jerusalem went one better with her fornications. For seeing the wild images of the Chaldeans on the walls, she became driven with lust and deceived by the beauty of the fine linen garments. She hurriedly sent messengers to them begging for an alliance. When they arrived, they succumbed to sexual temptation and defiled her. Repulsed by the two sisters, God acted swiftly, seeing her shames and fornications made public to everyone. As she has surpassed her sister's transgressions of the law, she must also outdo her sister in the greatness of her punishments. For she was of such great wantonness that now she would commit the worst sins in her age and the errors of her youth, for pursuing the Egyptian vices in her lust for the Chaldeans. For once upon a time she was mad with lust, for lying with the Egyptians, Ezekiel 23:20, whose flesh is as the flesh of donkeys, and whose issue of semen is so great of seed, or so large of genitalia, that they might surpass the horses in vulgarity. This scripture is one of the least read by people that are too hung up on the sex issue. They don't bother to read the rest. Ezekiel 24 makes it very clear that the language is symbolic. One of the strongest emotions that we as humans share is jealousy. Violence and murder committed for this reasons are considered crimes of passion. Until 1991, honour killings were, as a man killed his wife, were considered legal in Brazil. In just 1 year, over 800 women were killed in such a fashion. Until 1980, it was legal for a husband to kill his spouse when she committed adultery. In New Zealand, 60% of the murder cases that are brought before the court are a direct result of domestic violence. The writer of the book of Ezekiel chose to use this particular language style to cause the readers to feel the same level of outrage that God felt at that time. The consistency of human nature all but guaranteed that each and every generation of adults who came into contact with the passages would react to them. And apparently, judging from the reactions of so many people who read it, the strategy continues to work just fine.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. And when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining